went yesterday, and then the guy that gave me like the tour of everything,
Yeah.
he said that Saturday they did 6,000.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So I'm not sure what the numbers were yesterday, but the flow is so organized. And I had a couple people come up to me and say, wow, like this is really organized. Like this is really nice. So yeah, I just wanted to let you know. So I signed up again for next month.
Terrific.
But I just wanted to give you feedback on that.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And I appreciate the fact that you volunteered. As you can see, each one of our sites takes a lot of people to make it flow that smoothly.
Absolutely. I saw that firsthand.
Thank you, Tangela.
You're welcome.
Are you talking about COVID testing sites? Or
no,
not testing,
vaccination.
but COVID vaccination?
Yeah, mass
I saw something in the Baltimore Sun this morning, an article about how Salisbury, they have a lot of openings there, and then the same thing out in Hagerstown as well. So I don't know if that's relevant or anybody's looking for some options, but they have the next 2 days a bunch of open appointment slots.
They do. Even on campus at Salisbury, they have some open slots for Monday, at least as of yesterday they did. No, as of Friday they did. And I'm not sure about at the Hagerstown site, but on Frostburg's campus, they're starting to give vaccinations as well.
Oh, great.
I know at College Park, they opened up 1,200 vaccination appointments for Monday. I don't know how quickly those filled up.
Yeah, I toured it the other day with my vice president. It was very cool. But yeah, so we got 1,200. They use that primarily for like frontline staff that like haven't had the chance to get it, and then they got 1,200 more, and that filled up real quickly. But to my understanding, we should hopefully be getting more soon. So we'll see how that goes.
Well, that's one of the things we're going to be talking about with the health department communications person that's going to come on the line. I can give you a heads up. The reason that I suggested she come talk to you all is that they have seen both some vaccine hesitancy in the 18 to 25-year-old group of individuals, and they are also slightly frustrated because they have people who are not totally cooperative in contact tracing. And she wants to ask the student leaders how they could message better to, in fact, engage that age group. So hope you all don't mind that I offered you all up for a few minutes today to help the state health department in those two areas.
Sounds good. Thanks, Joe. All right. Good morning, everyone. It's the turn of the hour. It's 11 a.m. on a Sunday, which means student leaders in Maryland are gathering once a month to be together and convene and to have wonderful discussions and hopefully be able to connect in ways that are meaningful and can have some action connected to them as well. So just so we can delve right in, because as Joe mentioned, we have the Maryland Department of Health educators coming. We also have the USM Women's Forum coming, and we have some pretty big topic things to talk about as well. So a quick overview of this morning. I'll be quietly taking attendance like I have in the past to help save time. We'll do our reports. We will go over the bylaws that was sent to you a couple different times in email. So if you want to take a chance to pull that up, you're free to reference that throughout if you have questions or new ideas for what you may want to see. We will have our guest discussion, or guest speakers. We will have election updates because it's already that time of year. And we will do campus report highlights. And then we had a couple of students reach out to us. And I think it was a totally fine ask. And so we were answering that ask, which is they had asked to have a closed session to discuss shared governance at some point today. So we decided the best place for that to go was in lieu of breakout rooms. So we can have a really in-depth conversation about shared governance and the surveys that all of you have been working on. So with all of that, we will delve right into reports. So be patient with me because I just shared a different screen for reports. So 1 second. And here we go. All right, so. Yes, so a lot of my updates are me supporting the various areas of the executive and director team. So I will let them give most of these updates, but just know that it has, as always, been a very busy month. Our government affairs folks have been super busy. We had a meeting with Governor Hogan's chief of staff, and we gave kind of overview of all the different things that group and many of you even on separate committees like student fees have been working on throughout the year. So that was a really interesting meeting. We are hoping to do more with the Women's Forum. That's why they're coming today. They actually have some pretty cool opportunities including scholarships that I hope that they will share with you all today, because there are lots of women at all of our campuses who may be able to take part in those scholarships and help some students out. We are hopefully going to have Kyle return from MHEC to help us with the strategic plan feedback from MHEC. And then academic integrity is upcoming, as well as preparing for transition. And then our big event that Student Affairs, Matt and Daniel and April have been working so hard on, and Bernetta and Laura, everybody working really hard on that town hall event. If you have not yet filled out that form, if someone could put that form link into the chat, please do. Please help get questions and really quality content for that town hall on April 22nd. You're going to hear that a lot today. I'm just the first one. And then I will pass it on off to Bernetta.
Thanks, Annie. Good morning, everyone. Just a few updates from me. As we're nearing the end of our academic year, as well as our term, start thinking about your accomplishments if you haven't already. That's going to be something Annie's going to likely ask for to put in our end of year report. So think about how you want to summarize your accomplishments and work completed this year. Some of us have met and we talked about videos and some really creative ways to market that information, as well as think about suggestions for the coming year and the incoming team next year that will be replacing us. As Annie mentioned, that town hall, we're really excited. It's our first ever USM Student Council town hall. So we're going to hear about it a lot. An email was sent out. Matt's going to talk more about that. But if you haven't already, please start submitting topic questions on behalf of your students. All of you represent your institution. So while we're going to ask all students across USM to participate and engage, we especially want you to do so. So think of what you can ask, what you've been hearing from your students all year. And please use that form that was sent to you all in email. Additionally, we're going to ask you to help share and promote with your SGAs, your GSAs, your student clubs, organizations, every place you can plug in this event. And then my last update is the election, which I know is on the agenda for today. Just want to make sure that y'all know that you can share this information and you should be sharing it with those who you know really want to get involved in sort of a leadership role, whether it's the exec team, a director position, or our committees. Just to make sure we really get some great students to continue the work that we're doing into the next year. So that's it from me. I'll pass it over to Laura.
Hi, good morning, everyone. This month has been really jam-packed with meetings and meetings about meetings. The general theme basically is supporting initiatives. Our goal has been to promote transition that continues developing the collaboration, impact, and empowerment of the council and all the students. And definitely a takeaway from me has been the importance of direct communications at this time across all levels of students and management to minimize miscommunication and distractions. So as we're going through this internal turmoil in USMSC, please just reach out, or if you want to talk about how to best approach a difficult situation, we're definitely here to support you with that. A little later this meeting, I'm not going to go into it now, but we'll take a look at the bylaw changes that are proposed. I kind of assess what we have done this year and what can still be accomplished, and how the structure of USMSC and the bylaws can facilitate that and not hinder it going forward for the next administration. And then off to the student regions.
Hello, everybody. I apologize for my poor lighting this morning. It was either too bright or too dark, and so I've chosen not to blind everybody, but hopefully you can hear me all right. Great to be with you all. Just piggybacking on the comment about vaccines, we are all now eligible to sign up to receive that vaccine, so please do so. I know, it's best for us to lead by example, and so even if that means posting a cheesy Facebook post about you getting vaccinated, it truly can change minds. I actually had a friend of mine say to me that They hadn't really thought about it, but then they had friends posting that they had gotten vaccinated, and that actually encouraged them to say, hey, where can I sign up for an appointment? And it's massvax.maryland.gov. So we've got that link. You can send everybody there. But please encourage your friends to do that and do that as well yourself. We really can only do this together, and that's what we've been saying throughout the past year, but it still rings true today. Other than that, the other just highlight I wanted to touch on was we have an upcoming board meeting this Friday, and so looking forward to going through those materials once they're posted, and just continuing to work with and represent all of you. And it's a great honor, and it's been a wonderful year. And just I want to give a shout out to Annie, Bernetta, and Laura. We've had we meet during these meetings, and we also meet in between sometimes, and I just have truly enjoyed the continued collaboration that we continue to have. And we've got a great team, and I'm beyond appreciative for that. And thank you also to Joe and Zakia, who are always wonderful in responding to all our many emails. So we've got a great team. I don't mean to get too sentimental yet, because we've still got another month or so, but it's great to see you all. And as always, feel free to reach out to me anytime by text or email.
And as Annie and Bernetta mentioned, we're going to be talking about this a few times today. So this is the third time we're going to talk about the first ever USM SC Town Hall. And the topic is going to be 1 year into a pandemic together. We finalized the date of Thursday, April 22nd, and the time will be 6 p.m. There's a link, a couple of links in the chat, along with here on this page that you can click on that'll take you to a page specifically for it. Down at the bottom, there's a couple of links. One of them is to submit questions for the town hall. The other is for the actual webinar when it starts. And then the third one, which was one of Bernetta's ideas, I believe, was to learn more about USMSC, which is extremely important in getting the word out to other students who may not know about it. So feel free to direct everyone to this. What we're asking each of you to do is share the information with your committee members and also just fellow students that might not even be part of our group. So that way, the more people that can attend, the more effective it'll be, and it will, and we're going to be needing questions from a lot of people. That way, it'll help drive the conversation around COVID and kind of how it's been going over the last year and how our students have been impacted by it. So again, please share. And, we're, I think, about 10, 12 days away from it. But everyone that's been involved in the planning of it has been great. The Student Affairs Committee, the communications team, the executive team, and Zakia. It's all been great. So thank you, everyone, and we hope to see you there.
Good morning, everyone. Can everyone hear and see me? All right. So first, our next committee meeting is actually this Friday at 5:30 p.m. At our last meeting, we spoke about DEI awareness and different ways to bring awareness to it, like having campaigns or things like stand down days, which I think is a really good idea. So we're looking into that. Also, we went to the governor's meeting with Annie and Laura and Bernetta this week. And we found out about HBCU funds allocation, and that was pretty cool. We found out everything is being allocated based off of student enrollment, and they're being used for different programs to help the students. So that's the bulk of what we've done.
Hey guys, yes, need to update the mental health update. So we are trying to get on the same page about when to meet next as well. So one of my key concerns right now is trying to build a little more continuity and redundancy within this committee, since it was formed ad hoc this year, as well as making sure that we have the coverage to sort of move through just even the next couple months. And so as we start having strategic planning and bylaws discussions, one of the things that I want to raise is the possibility that when we form a committee, we have sort of a co-directorship with one undergrad and one graduate member, maybe from different institutions as well. Because with this committee, you know, again, we've had participation and interest skew really heavily towards institutions that don't necessarily have counseling resources and therapy centers. So how do we sort of address that moving forward, that if we are supporting this, that we sort of go ahead? So more updates to come on that, but I definitely wanted to share that with you guys this morning.
Can I ask a quick question of Beth? Is March a typo, and should it be April, or is that part of what you were saying as far as trying to set the next meeting? Because it said March.
That's part of it, set the next meeting. Yes, I did not have a chance to go in and update the slides.
Okay.
So that's why. So definitely we'll follow through from that.
Okay.
Good morning, everyone. This is Arslan. I'm the co-director of government relations along with Yvonne Harper. As Annie mentioned, we had the meeting with the governor's office this past week. It was a very productive meeting. We covered a lot of topics: civic engagement. We talked about affordability and transparency, accountability. The Future Acts, which is one of the landmark bills that we were working on, which aims to have our institutions be more carbon efficient throughout our institutions. So it was a very productive meeting. And if you have any questions, that I'd be happy to, Yvonne or I would be happy to answer them. And also we worked on, one thing I did not mention here, but one thing we also worked on was trying to get some bills out of committee. This was the last week of session. Monday is the last day, sine die. So we were just trying to get some of those bills out of committee as well. And then our next meeting, I think, is still tentative, but I think we're still planning it to be on April 18th. I will update you guys if you would like, but it's not 100% sure for right now. But you know, we do plan on debriefing on what bills we worked on this past session. What are some bills that we could work on in the next session? We'll be starting to talk with a few delegates and senators to see if we can reintroduce those same bills that did not pass this time around. So we'll be working on that as well in our meeting. So
also, this is Yvonne. Because session is ending tomorrow, as Arsalan stated, we are still going to meet through the end of our term bi-weekly, well, maybe not bi-weekly, but maybe every 3 weeks, just to kind of prepare the next team for how to proceed with government relations, given if we're here or not here. We're also going to put together maybe a little clip of a video, just allowing you guys to understand what were the bills that we put forth in the session this year, just to have a little bit more structure. So that'll be coming following the end of session tomorrow.
Hey everyone, this is Niv from Comms. Sorry, I have a bit of a sore throat today. Actually, I don't think this is I may have put my edits on another slide. I completely apologize for that. Annie, I apologize. I'm not sure if you refresh it, whether it'll be different. But I put some new language in this.
This is the only thing I have is when Laura sends out that link to the thing for everyone to update. That's what I click on and I'm able to see.
Oh, okay. I went to the OneDrive, so it might be on a different thing. I completely apologize.
I'm sorry.
No, that's on me. That's on me. I was doing it last night. So Comms, Corey and I have been working really hard to make sure we promote the student town hall. If you have been seeing the flyers that have been going out about the town hall, that's all Corey. He's been doing a fantastic job. And he's currently making different posts for the individual bios for all the speakers. And our goal is to have a new one going out every 2 days. So starting tomorrow. Also, what I've been doing is every time I'm posting on social media, I'm reaching personally to all the SGA social media accounts, asking them to reshare it. So Towson, UMBC, Shady Grove, thank you so much for reposting everything. I will be reaching out to you all personally again, just to make sure we keep getting the word around. Also, Corey, sometime last month, reached out to you all about the point of contact for your communications teams. So if you already haven't done that, please make sure that you send that to Corey. I'll ask him to resend that email so that we can make sure. From the UMB side, I'm sending a campus-wide email tomorrow to everybody about it. And so we'll make sure that we also promote it from our end. So as Bernetta mentioned, make sure when you send the town hall, you use hashtag USMSC town hall. And also there are different ways students can participate. They can attend the event, they can promote the event, they can also submit questions. That's the main thing. We want this session to be as interactive and engaging as possible. So when you do promote it, please do make sure that students are aware that they can submit questions. And so comms team is going to work closely with the exec board and student affairs have been doing a fantastic job to make sure we get the word around. So from your end, if you see our post, please just reshare it, retweet as many people. This is our first time we are having this event. And I think our goal is to make sure this happens every single year, maybe for probably topics that are not COVID related, maybe something more pleasant. So apart from that, our main focus for this week will be the town hall, but after that, we'll probably be helping with getting the word around about recruiting for our next USMSC and other USMSC activities. And if you have anything you'd like us to promote, just send Corey and I an email and or a text message or something, and we'll make sure we get the word around. And I think that's it. And Annie, I apologize. I may have used a different presentation for this. It had the exact same email. It had the exact same thing, slides everybody else had, but I'm not sure why my changes didn't get updated. I apologize for that.
No worries at all. Did you still have a plan for, or wanted to mention any plan for the statement you were going to propose for folks to be in solidarity with the Asian American
Oh, that's right.
community?
Yes, I completely forgot. So I prepared a solidarity in response to the recent crimes of racism and hate against members of the Asian American, and Pacific Islander community. I got really tied up with some family issues recently, so I didn't send it out to everybody. But I myself or somebody on the exec team will send that probably for an informal vote. I really want to show USMSC stand on how we feel about this issue and show that we do oppose any kind of hate crime and crimes against all our USMSC students and students in the general community and this country as a whole. So keep an eye out for that. And Annie, does that cover everything? Sorry, I completely missed
Yeah,
about
you're
that.
fine. No, yeah, and feel better. All right. Here we go. Do either of our advisors have anything you wanted to share this week?
Yeah, let me say three things fairly quickly, four things actually. Number one, Zakia sent out an email about cords, and we have red, black, and gold cords. They're like honors cords that people can wear at graduation. If you want those, please email either Zakia or me, and we'll mail them to you right away so that you can have them. I usually hand them out to everybody who's graduating at the March or April meeting.
Joe, let me just tag on to that real quick because that was
Yep.
the only thing I was going to add. Tomorrow or Tuesday, I will send an email to everyone who's already sent me a note. If you don't hear from me, then that means I don't have your name on the list. So again, you can pop your name in the chat. You can send me an email. But if you don't hear from me by Tuesday to say, just one more confirmation I have you on the list, then that means I don't have you on the list. And that's for folks who are graduating in May or even December if you are not going to be or may not be back with USM in the fall. That's it.
Okay, thanks, Z. One comment I wanted to make about the HBCU bill that was passed by the Maryland legislature and signed by the governor. That totals about $577 million over 10 years to be distributed among the 4 HBCUs. In fact, this came up a little bit on the meeting with the governor's office, and I wanted to make sure all the students understood that those dollars go directly to the HBCUs. They do not come to System. System will be working with each of our HBCUs, Bowie, Coppin, and UMES, doing whatever we can to support them as they develop new plans for new programs or expansion of their programs. But those monies do go straight to the individual institutions. The last point actually has 2 sub-points, and it really is one of those situations that continues to evolve very rapidly. And that is the idea of either requiring vaccinations and what our plans are for testing as we turn the corner and come back in the fall. One thing I can say for sure, or at least pretty sure at this point, is that we will once again require a negative test as people enter campus in the fall, even if you're vaccinated, just so that we know that we're starting the term with a clean slate, if you will. That's one thing. How often we will be testing is still very much up in the air and depends on how we end up deciding about vaccinations. And right now, as you probably know, I think there are now 21 institutions nationally that have already declared that they're going to require vaccinations of students as they return in the fall. I know that Chancellor Perman feels strongly that that would be the safest way for us to, in fact, move forward. This would, of course, be a requirement that a student who has a health reason or a documented religious reason for not being vaccinated would be allowed on campus without vaccination, but there will be processes on campus to have the student go through to document the reason they are not being vaccinated. We are planning at this point in time that we will come back much more dense than we were this year. The exact density is not known, but we, at this time, I think everybody needs to find the most comfortable masks they can, because we can imagine that we will still be requiring masks, at least in classrooms and in buildings, until we get to the point that we have beat the virus down significantly more than it is right now, especially since the British variant B.1.1.7 now is the dominant strain that is being found in testing across the country. We believe that we will have something ready for the Board of Regents on Friday about the decision of about whether we are asking the Board of Regents to agree to giving the Chancellor the authority to require vaccinations, but we still are working with the Attorney General's office and a few national experts. Most of the institutions that are requiring vaccinations so far are private institutions. They have much more flexibility than public institutions do. So we're working through that, but I will reinforce what Nate said before. Mass vaccination is the way that we're going to get out of this pandemic. And so we urge everybody to, in fact, step forward and lead by example, as Nate said. I'll stop there. And Zakia, do you have anything else to add?
Nothing else.
Can I just add something really quick to what you just said, Joe? So when I was at the stadium yesterday, I had a couple conversations with Hopkins students that were there, and they did say that they're requiring, when they open back up, they're requiring that everybody has a full vaccination before they can attend class. Right.
Hopkins is one of the 21 across the United States. Rutgers is one of the, was actually the first one to step up, and they are a public institution. But the law reads slightly differently in New Jersey than it does here. So I end up getting legal lessons in legalese much more frequently than I would care to, but we of course are moving forward carefully.
Oh, and they fed us yesterday too.
Okay.
Cool. Thank you, everybody, for all your reports. We are really good at being on time today, so I'm proud of everybody. I'm going to ask. There is one person that's showing up on my screen as iPhone. Is that you, Luella? Is that you from USM Women's Forum? Hello? Maybe not. In which case, I do not believe our person from USM Women's Forum is here. But I'll just do a general. Is anyone from USM Women's Forum here? we'll give them a couple minutes because I think I told them. Okay, yeah, okay. Well, I'll see if whoever's on the iPhone could tell us who they are at some point. That would be much appreciated. I don't know if we have to kick
I
that
think it's
person out.
Randy. I think he just.
Oh, thank you.
He just changed.
Sorry, Annie, that's me. I'm on my iPhone.
Okay,
Thank
Annie.
you so much. I was like, this is so awkward. I'm gonna have to kick iPhone out. And I've never had to kick anybody out before.
Annie,
Yeah.
if we have just a minute before the women's forum come, I would love to hear the immediate feedback the student leaders have, the response they have if we should mandate vaccines. Do you all think that this is a reasonable idea? Would you be picketing all of us in protest? What's the sense of the student leadership if we have a minute?
As you all are answering that, Laura, if you wanted to share a screen for bylaws, or do you want me to share a screen? I can help prep for that.
Go ahead.
At Bowie, it's not that we're opposed to the vaccine, it's that people are having a harder time getting it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if we were at a point where more people were able to easily sign up for the appointments, I think that we would be much more, you know, open to having it required, because of course we're concerned about people's safety. We've had quite the initiative to educate people on COVID, educate people on why the vaccine is necessary. And of course, like you said before, there's going to be those religious exceptions, but I know that for Bowie, we're not opposed to the vaccine. It's just, it's harder to get it in certain populations.
Right. Thank you, Liberty. I appreciate that. And we are working with your health center to try and get Bowie to be a closed pod in and of itself. And
yeah, Dr. Wutal has done amazing work,
yes,
and we absolutely love her. And we are having all of our fingers and toes crossed that we can be a pod center.
Thank you. Dan, you were going to say
a couple quick. Sorry, go ahead, Dan. And I got a couple questions.
Sounds good. I was just gonna say, we talked about this with our provost at College Park this day. I think students, or at least the students that she was talking with, definitely support it. I think the question more so becomes, a lot of students are getting vaccinated right now, wherever that may be. So what does it look like if a booster is needed in November? But I think at College Park it would be fine.
Joe, a couple quick questions, which is, with a mandate like that, would that follow whatever we're doing nationwide? Would it be for students who are staying on campus, or would it be anyone who's enrolled at a USM institution?
We would have to do the wording carefully, and we are working with the UMGC president on that. Of course, for example, if you have, I think you may have some classes that are actually face-to-face in Texas, and we can't require those folks because they're under a state mandate that we cannot require people in Texas. So we're going to have to be careful about this. This is primarily students who are going to be on campus, but we would like for it to be not only students living in the dorms, that would be our top priority. But if you're living in a public-private partnership or very close to the campus and are on campus all the time, in many ways, it doesn't make sense to us to separate those groups. But people who would still be staying 100% remote, I think would be exempted.
Okay. Thank you. The only other question or other consideration for me would just be any potential. Sorry, we just had someone join.
Barbara Archer, please mute. Thank you.
Yeah, maybe Zakia could.
I just did. Barbara, we'll unmute you in a second. We get feedback when you. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. The only other consideration is just any potential side effects. You know, there are some, right? From time to time, it varies. So I just wonder what USM would do in consideration of that for students who may experience those sort of things.
The side effects that we are aware of are actually pretty minimal. You can feel pretty crappy for a day or a day and a half. And a lot of people do, and so on. But the hope that we have is that, number one, as was pointed out by Liberty, we allow between now and coming back to school the time for people to get vaccinated. And we would be also sharing information so that people would be able to figure out what's most convenient for them. to get vaccinated, and hopefully giving you that big a window now that everybody is eligible for it, all adults are eligible. And the vaccine, besides J&J, who are having some trouble, the vaccine really is continuing to flow. So it's going to be much easier to get vaccinated, especially as you get all of us old people out of the way. It'll be easier for everybody else to get vaccinated.
So can I just ask a question, just because we likely will be voting on this at our Friday meeting, and my initial inclination is to support the measure because we already require other vaccines for students coming to campus and enrolling in our institutions. So I see this as we're just adding a vaccine to that list. Also, with particular paying attention to our students that do live on campus, or even those that commute, I wouldn't want a couple students to put the rest of our campus communities at risk, and then we could be facing another, horrible shutdown or something like that, which obviously we want to avoid. And so considering that we would have those religious and medical exemptions, if they're properly documented, I'm inclined to support the measure. And I don't know how controversial or not it would be at a board meeting with a vote, but just so I can go there and say the USMSC, the students support this, which is what I would want to say. Do we have an informal consensus that our student community would be in support of such a measure? And of course, trusting our legal teams to do their due diligence with the wording.
Right. I will tell you, Nate, that the difference with the COVID vaccine is it is still under emergency use authorization rather than full FDA approval. But now that tens of millions of people have received the vaccine and the side effects, although uncomfortable for a day or two, have not been dramatic. I think, but that's the legal technicality that we're having to deal with.
Can I add something really quickly? So yesterday, they have a separate section, which is for observers, and they observe people for reactions. They also have a separate section for people that have underlying medical conditions, so they have to be observed a little bit longer. So they have all of that in place. I did not see any reactions really, but they were all ages. I mean, from teenagers to elderly, and then they have a separate section for people that can get through faster, that like if you're in a wheelchair or something like that. So they have it down to a science. It's pretty remarkable.
Thank you, Tangela.
If it's helpful, we were going to do kind of a poll in the background via Zoom, and that might be our easiest, fastest way to get that answer for you, Nate, and for Joe, but for your vote on Friday. So be on the lookout for that during this meeting as we try to set that up in the background. In the meantime, I would love to pass this off to Laura, who's been doing a lot of work to help make sure we set things up for success in the future via bylaws.
Hi, sorry, you caught me in the middle of a messaging. Okay, let me share my screen. All right, so some of these are just for kind of grammar and language, and I'll try and flow through those and focus on the important ones. So this one, the first one, just for language. The B, voting in absentia, we edited this to allow for absentee or proxy votes depending on the situation, because if we're doing votes via email, or if it's something that has to be briefed during the meeting and you vote right there, that's understandable. But if it's something you can read ahead of time and vote and not necessarily make the meeting, then the president and the executive board have the option to accept those votes. If you're going to send somebody in your place, you have to let the exec board know 2 days in advance. Let's see, we added a couple sections here to allow for accessibility and virtual attendance options in the future, kind of from what we've learned this year, and prioritizing, putting in writing that we prioritize any accommodations that might be necessary as they come up. Let's see, language, these are all language breakout sessions. We switched it from having to be formal graduate and undergraduate breakout sessions because as you've seen, we've kind of changed that depending on the topics that are, of importance of people. Like all the grads might not want to talk about one thing, so we kind of, and then obviously today we have the big shared governance session. So this adds more flexibility for the board with meetings in the future. Took this, the voting out so that votes can be taken more than once a month. They can be done via email or special meetings or whatever. We added special meeting in here. Membership of the committee does not need to be shared at the time the committee is formed. We've changed all the expectations for reports to 2 days from 5 days because we've found that we don't need 5 days. 2 days is fine. This is just for capitalization. This is just rewording of what was already in there for flow so that it makes more sense. That actually has not really changed. We've added, so for removal purposes, and this is kind of the same in each of the different sections, we've added that someone going for a removal process hearing can be notified via email instead of certified mail because certified mail is archaic. Let's see. Making sure that the proper people are involved, the institution's vice president for student affairs. And this is all open. So if you guys have thoughts or comments that we should change it, I did send it to you guys in the email. I think it was also in Annie's email. So if you guys have something that you feel is of concern or it's a red flag or something like that, we'll vote on it in May, but this is our time to discuss kind of. Let's see. So we've changed written report to summary because we found that we don't need a full report and it just adds extra just paperwork to people and it's not really necessary. Let's see. Okay, so this is again, changing from the formal graduate and undergraduate breakout sessions, ensuring that there's communication with the USM advisors. This is for the VP of grad and undergraduate affairs. Ensuring that candidates for the executive board are in good standing for their entire term. So this section here kind of describes the election process and that if it's not able to be completed at the first meeting can be postponed to the beginning of the next academic year. And how to, and who's in charge during that time. Let's see, failing to perform their, okay, so this is for removal for board members. We've kind of tried to fix that process for everyone in the council. So we've added that they can be removed for failing to perform their duties as described in the bylaws or agreed upon during discussions because we said in the past that we were going to try and hold people accountable. So putting that in writing, and representatives still have the power to make a motion to remove anyone from the council. This is B is pretty much just for flow. It doesn't actually change it. Adding official email again. This is for grammar. Adding the option for a special meeting instead of just the official meeting. Just changing language. Here we've added the option for the president to appoint co-directors or a single director, depending on the situation. And then down here that right now, all of our directors don't vote. They don't have that power, but Annie so wisely pointed out that some of the smaller schools may have issue with, having the manpower to be able to send multiple people to be able to participate in USMSC. So in those cases, the executive board can make the decision to allow directors to serve as voting representatives. Changing 5 to 2 business days, as we said. 5 was, we didn't need the 5. Didn't really change the description of the director jobs too much. DEI, we just basically changed it for appropriate language, and then added the annual report of recommendations. Let's see. All right, so this is the removal section again. Let's see, failing to perform their duties, same as it was for the executive board. Once again, this section, we changed it for language, doesn't actually change what's happening there. As I said earlier, adding official email. And then directors may be removed with the 2/3 vote of the executive committee for the reasons outlined in the section above, with the USM advisor engaged in that process. In the case of, where's that section? That refers to the section, I don't know what section that refers to. Sorry, I lost my place now. Okay. Section A of the, okay. So that's here, the attendance guidelines and failing to perform their duties as described in the bylaws or through emails. Ex officio members, this kind of gives more specifics on the student regent process, and changed selection and interview, because obviously we don't select them, we just suggest our recommendations. Change December to fall in both sections to allow for flexibility there in case it can't happen in December, and it happens in November instead. And then having in writing to ensure the student regent continues to collaborate with USMSC as an ex officio member. And then here just for language and grammar. Are there any questions? Does anybody want me to go back over a section?
Laura, this is Joe. I do have one comment that I'm sorry I missed in my reading. In the section where you talk about vice presidents for student affairs,
yes,
you may need to keep in there the executive directors of the regional centers because they do not have vice presidents.
Okay, that's a good, thank you very much. Beth, I did make note of your suggestion about committees and school and student diversity, and I'll take a look at that section if you have any suggestions on how to guide committees to ensure that, you know, we're kind of getting a broad participation there. If we could add like a word or something in there, that's possible. Maybe not something that's a must, but maybe a should or a shall or something like that.
I mean, I think that potentially adding a bullet that says, you know, recommended that the committees have a graduate representative and an undergraduate representative that lead sort of as co-directors, that could potentially be good. At the same time, you know, I don't want to discourage the formation of ad hoc committees and what we've done, you know, to this point, but it doesn't do us much good if it's really skewed to one type of campus or another, or if it's skewed to one level of experience or another. And I think that by sort of saying at least best practice, if not mandated, I'll sort of leave it to the group if you want to think about that. I think that we encourage more sustainability and continuity moving forward on some of this work, because if, you know, a grad rep might only be there for a year or two at most, and then the undergrads have that ability to sort of stick with it and to formulate those relationships with faculty and staff that can be really fruitful over time. So I see value in at least just, you know, adding a bullet that says maybe committees should be co-directors beyond that. So that's all I have to add right now, but I can definitely get back with you on that.
No, that's a really great point. I'll try to draft some language or figure out how we can work that in there to promote that issue. So thanks for your suggestion. All right, well,
Excellent. Yeah, thanks, Laura, because bylaws are important, but they can feel so bland. So thank you for working on bylaws to make things better for folks. All right, so I'm happy to say that our USM Women's Forum rep is here, Luella Hackett, and I will go ahead, Luella, feel free to start speaking. I'll go ahead and bring up your website and
Sure.
reference that.
Sure. Thank you so much. Thank you guys for having me. My name is Luella Hackett, and I am representing our Women's Forum Student Scholarship Committee. And if you're not aware of, but we do give out scholarships to our students, graduate and undergraduate annually. And the time is right now. We do have on our website the applications for them. But what we are asking for you to do for us is if you could blast it around to your students. Now, last year we did have an increase in application as would be expected because of the COVID. And what we have done as a body is to increase the amount. We got approval to increase the amount of the dollar amount. And so it's up to $1,000 for students, and which means that if we do get a number of students, which we anticipate that we will get, we will start at probably $500 up to $1,000. Now, at present, as of Friday, we have 109 applicants already. Last day we got close to 300. So we're asking you if you could really put this out on your campus as much as possible. The deadline for the application is June 15th. And I will put in the chat the application, but it's also on our website. But just in case that you want to go through it and see exactly what it entails, it's right there. It's also for graduate students. We also have scholarships for our staff and also faculty. They all are on our website. And we're encouraging and staff and faculty to apply as well, because in the past, we have noticed that we have not had much, especially faculty. And these are for like professional development in your career as you move forward. And so we are encouraging as much as possible applicants to apply, and whatever this body can do to help us get to that, especially for our students. And that would be helpful for us as much as possible. I'm not sure if you may have any questions, but we have about 10 scholarships that we give for students, and that's graduate and undergrad. And then we have 5 for both staff and faculty. Students, we usually get more than the others. So it's right on our website, and as Annie has it up there, you could go there and actually view that. But at the end, I will put the application for students, because we are representing the students here today. Any questions anyone would have?
Yeah, Luella, could you tell the council just a little bit about what USM Women's Forum is and the purpose?
Okay. The Women's Forum is a body of women that really we advocate for women across the system. What we do, we are champions and we celebrate the achievements of women, but we also foster networking among women in all areas, whether it's student, faculty, or staff. And we have been in operation for over 32 years this year. We serve as advocates for issues and concerns of the communities of women within the system, and we also recognize and foster their achievement. We also exchange and disseminate information about women within the system, and And we actually have we have our annual conference every October. For the first time last year, we had our virtual conference with close to over 300 attendees, and we anticipate more even this year. We also advocate for other minority groups, regardless of what the affiliation, and not necessarily for women, but other minority groups. And we intend to increase that. We have several committees. I have our advocacy committee. We also have we have a marketing committee. We also have what else? We have about 5 committees that serves the forum. The advocacy, the marketing committee, the events committee, and about 2 others. The faculty, we also stand in solidarity with all, as I said, minority groups. As you will see on our website, what we do, what we have done over the years, and what should be up shortly in another couple, maybe a month or 2, is the scholarships that we have given out beginning back in the early 2000. We started to give scholarships, and we have given a number of scholarships out, and that will be on our website as well. So you'll get a better feel for what we have been doing over the years, and especially over the last 20 or so years, because it has grown tremendously. Each university, we are represented with at least three representatives from each university, and 2 for staff and 1 for faculty. We do not have all represented universities at this time, all 16, and we're still working on that with the different presidents and organizations that gives the okay for these to for members to become a part of the Women's Forum. I think that is, I'm hoping that most of you have heard of us, and if you haven't, will after today be able to go on our website and see what we have done, what we are doing, and to be a part of what we do, not only for students, but for our faculty and the staff as well. Okay, do we have any questions? No questions? All righty. I am going to put in the chat, I'm going to put in the chat the application for the students, and I'll encourage you as much as possible to share it on your campus as a blast. And on our website also, as I said, is the you will find the applications for also faculty and staff.
Thanks, Luella. Much
You are
appreciated.
very welcome. Thank you so much, Annie, and thank you all for having me, and have a great day.
Thanks, Luella.
Sure.
Yeah, and hopefully we're all kind of passing and trading around. So I attended one of the USM Women's Forums meetings this past month, and they're hoping for some more collaboration, especially in efforts of advocacy that are overlapping. One of the ones that really came to mind that they've been working really hard on this year is childcare on campuses, as well as flexibility during COVID with work schedules and so forth. So it was really cool, and they look forward to working with more students in addition to faculty and staff across the system with some of their really cool advocacy efforts. So yeah. And I think I see a couple of them, but if our folks from the health department are here, I am happy to share anything you need me to share, but if not, the floor is yours. And thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much for having us. So Perry is going to be doing the presentation, so I believe she should be able to share her screen, correct? Perry, are you able
Yes,
to do
I
that? Yep.
can share my screen.
Awesome.
So
Well, I just want to, I just wanted to introduce, I'm just going to introduce us and then I'll let Perry take over. But my name is Sarah Linden. I am the health education, the manager for health education and outreach for the contact tracing unit at the Maryland Department of Health. And Perry is our wonderful, excellent, incredible health educator for minority and vulnerable populations. So I'm going to hand it over to her and let her do her thing, but we are both on and available for questions at the end.
Yes, thank you, Sarah, for that introduction. I'm going to share my screen. And today we're going to be talking about contact tracing and why it's so important. So let me share my screen. Oh, that's not the PowerPoint. Here we go. Can everyone see my screen? Okay, perfect. So good afternoon again. My name is Perry. I'm the health educator for minority and vulnerable populations, and we'll be going into contact tracing today. So we'll be talking about what contact tracing is, what to expect from a contact tracing call, the important confidentiality precautions that we take at the health department, this new cool app you can get on your phone called MD COVID Alert, some data specific to college age students, so 18 to 24, and then open for some discussion and questions. So let's dive in. So what is contact tracing? So contact tracing is an essential public health tool that's been around for decades to help slow the spread of disease. It came about in the early 1900s and we're still using it as a really important, perfect public health tool to help stop the spread of disease. It involves identifying cases. So those are people who test positive, let's say like for COVID-19, and those they might have come into contact with. So people they might have exposed, and those are called possible contacts. So it helps to prevent the further spread of disease by isolating those cases and quarantining those contacts. And we ask people to monitor their symptoms and signs for COVID-19. So who conducts contact tracing? It's conducted by trained public health professionals. And again, it's conducted with people who test positive or those who might have been exposed to COVID-19. It is happening in all 24 jurisdictions in Maryland. And you probably have seen these terms here. So again, contact tracing is for those who test positive, the cases, and for those who've possibly been exposed to COVID-19, they quarantine. So cases, those who test positive, isolate. And so isolation lasts for 10 days after symptom onset, or if they don't have symptoms, if they're asymptomatic, the day they got their test. And to be released from isolation, you have to be 24 hours fever-free without the use of fever-reducing medication. And your symptoms have to be improving if you do have symptoms for at least 24 hours. And then based on this criteria, we know that you are no longer infectious and you can return out into the world. Now for quarantine, this is for people who have possibly been exposed. So these are people that have come into contact with someone who tests positive for COVID-19. And we say a possible contact is someone who is within 6 feet or less for 15 minutes or more. And so it's recommended that these contacts are quarantined for 14 days. And the reason for this is because, as we know, it can take a while for your body to develop COVID-19 symptoms and for you to know if you are positive. But there are options for early release from quarantine. So possible contacts who are asymptomatic, so have 0 symptoms, can be released early after 10 days if they don't have symptoms. Or they can be released after 7 days if they also don't have symptoms and present a negative test on 5 days or later after they were exposed to that positive person. And the reason we ask people to get a test after 5 days or later is because it can take a while for your viral load to be high enough in your body to be detected by a test. So you want to make sure that we know if you're truly positive or negative. So what about the vaccine? So vaccine is out. Maryland residents who are 16 or older can now register to be vaccinated. So what does contact tracing have to do with vaccination?
So contact tracing and the vaccine work together to stop the spread of COVID-19. Contact tracing is still important, even with vaccines out in the world. Individuals who are vaccinated will still need to isolate if they test positive. As you know, vaccines aren't 100%. You can still get COVID-19 even if you're vaccinated. So those individuals will still need to isolate. And vaccinated individuals, there are some rules about quarantine now. If you are fully vaccinated, you will not have to quarantine if you are exposed to someone who tested positive. And by fully vaccinated, we mean that you received your last dose. So if you got the Moderna or Pfizer, which is 2 doses, you had to receive that last dose and be 14 days since that last dose. You also have to be asymptomatic, so not showing any symptoms. Now, there are some exceptions for people who work in healthcare facilities, nursing homes, and some of those high-risk facilities. So again, you have to be fully vaccinated, and it has to be 2 weeks past your last day of, if you have the Moderna or Pfizer. For the J&J, just that 1 shot, 2 weeks after you receiving that 1 shot. So how does the flow of contact tracing work? So you go get tested, then your test comes back positive. That positive test result is received in our system, then contact tracing is initiated. So within 24 hours of receiving that positive case into our system, a contact tracer will reach out to the individual. They will see MD COVID or this number 240-466-4488 on their phone. They will then answer the call knowing that it is a contact tracer. The contact tracer will then interview that case, ask them about any symptoms they're having, if they need any help, and then collect information on their possible contacts. Contact tracers will then call those possible contacts and let them know they've possibly been exposed and give them guidance on how to quarantine. We also don't just call the person one time and just leave it as that. We follow up on people for cases and possible contacts. We want to make sure that if their symptoms are worsening, that we can connect them to medical assistance. And if they need any support, like in getting pharmaceuticals or groceries while they isolate and quarantine, since they can't leave their home, we can provide that support to them. So we follow up with individuals. We don't just call them the one time. So what can we expect from a contact tracing call? So if you see that MD COVID or this number on your phone, answer the call. It is a contact tracer. We ask about symptoms and see how you're feeling. Again, we gather that information on your possible contacts. We provide help, support, and guidance on how to isolate and quarantine, answer any questions you may have. Again, we are trained public health professionals, and connect individuals to resources if they need those resources and support. So do like Drake does, answer the call. It's very important because it really does help slow the spread of disease. So what will a contact tracer ask you? So they'll ask you for your date of birth and your address. And the reason a contact tracer is going to ask this is because we have to confirm that we're speaking to the correct individual. Since we're talking about, private health information, we want to make sure we have the right person on the line. Again, we'll ask about your symptoms, those possible contacts, and resources you may need. Things a contact tracer will never ask: your social security number, financial information, personal details unrelated to COVID-19. Never ask for photos, passwords, anything, money payment, or immigration status. If this does happen, if you do get a call from someone asking for these things, that is fraud. That is not a health department professional, and you can report them to your local health department. So what about this confidentiality? So you're going to be talking about some private information and possibly possible contacts. And so we do want to let people know that anything that you share with a contact tracer is kept confidential and is protected because of your privacy. During contact that you with other people that you possibly could have exposed other people, we do not disclose your name when we call your possible contacts. So your name is not shared. So they won't know who possibly could have exposed them. Because again, we keep your privacy protected. And also information that you share with a contact tracer during that phone call is only shared with local health department and the health department on a need-to-know basis. We don't share information with outside agencies like immigration or housing authorities. We keep all your information secure and private.
Harry, Harry,
yes.
This is Dr. Joe Boffman. On that last point, I would explain to folks that the universities are, in this case, outside agencies too. So in fact, they will not be sharing that information with the university. So there will be no follow-up, for example, around student conduct or whatever. So if in fact somebody has been exposed at a party, this does not tie into student conduct in any way. This is clearly separate from that. I just wanted to reinforce that point.
Yes, no, thank you so much for saying that. Correct, exactly. We take your privacy to extreme measures here at the health department. We don't want to share any of your health information that is not needed. So to go over this MD COVID alert exposure notification, you guys might have heard about this. So this is some new-ish cell phone technology to help support contact tracing. It doesn't replace it, it just supports it. So what this is an app on your phone that helps let you know if you've possibly been exposed to someone that has COVID-19. For this app to work, everyone needs to have this downloaded on their phone. And let's say we have two people, they took the campus shuttle together. They sat, less than 6 feet apart, and they were on the shuttle for more than 15 minutes. And one individual ends up testing positive for COVID-19. They can then go into their app, report that they test positive, and that person, that other person or anyone that was on that bus with them for more than 15 minutes, less 6 feet or less, will get an exposure notification on their phone that they possibly have been exposed to COVID-19. Now, it doesn't say the person's name of who exposed them on the bus. It doesn't share what cell phone number, doesn't share any private information. It just lets them know that they possibly have been exposed. So then they can take the steps to quarantine themselves and reach out to public health officials. So again, it's completely anonymous. It uses low Bluetooth technology, so it doesn't track you. It doesn't use GPS. It doesn't drain your body because of low energy Bluetooth technology that is used. And again, it does not collect any personal identifiable information. So if you've been alerted, if you get this alert exposure notification on your phone, you will then can get tested, you will monitor your health, you will quarantine, and you possibly can get a call from a contact tracer if someone says that you were a possible contact. We will send these slides out, and this is a QR code that you can scan so you can see how to download the application onto your phone. For iPhones, it's actually in the phone settings. You don't have to actually download an app. You just go to your phone settings. And for Android, you go to the Google Play Store like you would to download any other type of app. So I want to talk about some data we have for campus age students, ages 18 to 24. So this is our contact tracing data that we have gathered. So this is from 6/15 of last year to now, here in April. And this shows our cascade of contact tracing. So the first column is the total number of cases. So those who are positive that we have in our system. Then we have the next column over of those cases that have phone numbers that are working. And the next are those that are successfully reached. So the next column here shows those that successfully answered the phone call and we were able to talk to the correct person on the line. Now that doesn't mean that those people talk to us. They can refuse to participate. So the next column here are those that actually finish an interview with contact tracers. And the last column here is the at least named one possible contact they could have exposed. So as you can see, we're missing people here. We're missing a couple thousand people. We want to, everyone we reach, we want to be able to interview them. We want them not to refuse. We want to alleviate those concerns because participating in contact tracing will really help the community in slowing the spread of disease. And so what about those possible contacts? So again, we reach out to those possible contacts so they can quarantine. So these are the total number of possible contacts entered into our system. And now we get their phone number information from those cases. So these are the contacts with the phone number that was working. Now we weren't very successful in reaching those possible contacts. A lot of them did not answer the phone. Could be because maybe, they didn't trust that we weren't a scam, or they didn't want to pick up the phone to be told to quarantine. Who knows why? But we really need to increase this number. So again, if those people do end up testing positive later down the road because they were exposed, we need to be there to help assist them and get them in quarantine so they don't expose it to other people on campus. So that is the end of our quick presentation about contact tracing. Does anyone have any questions? I have some discussion for you guys because here at the health department, we want to know how we can promote contact tracing on campuses in Maryland. So I just wanted to hear from the students. Do you guys have any concerns about participating in contact tracing? Is anything jumping out at you of why you wouldn't participate in contact tracing?
Hi, Perry. Hi. So, I'm not on campus and I don't fall into that 25 to 18-year-old demographic, but as a parent who has two children that are younger, that I went through the contract tracing once because my third child actually tested positive for COVID. So every day I had all of these different text messages, and it actually took up a lot of time. It was even though at the end it was a text message, it was 3 or 4 text messages, but that initial interview took about an hour to an hour and a half, maybe. It just took a really long time. So I don't know if that leads to part of the people being hesitant to participate. So I did want to put that part out there.
Yes, and thank you for bringing up that point. We're constantly updating our scripts to streamline the process, to make things more comfortable and not as slow for people. So those are things we have been working on, and hopefully, with training and through the update of our scripts, that we can kind of make that process go a little bit faster for people, so they don't feel like they're on the phone for very long, so they can support our public health efforts.
Okay, thank you.
I also sorry, I absolutely hear that. We occasionally have to go back and listen to the interviews again, and it certainly gets complicated and can add time on when we are asking a parent to do interviews for all of their minor children. Because right now the way that we do it is we can only conduct contact tracing with people who are 18 and above, and for people who are minors, the parents have to complete the interviews for them. So we are trying to figure out ways to make that process easier when we are asking a parent to do an interview for themselves. And, for in your case, their 3 minor children, that absolutely can get very complicated and long. And so we are, as Perry said, we are working on ways to streamline that process. But for someone who maybe is just completing an interview for themselves, who isn't having to worry about doing it for minor children, hopefully, typically the interviews are like around 20 minutes, is what a standard interview would be.
Do any students on the call have any concerns about participating in contact tracing? Or do they think of any reasons why other, students on their campus wouldn't want to participate?
One thing, I'm sorry. One thing that jumped out to me was with the app, I don't know, it seems kind of scary if you, I guess, weren't in close proximity. But I think you said 2 feet, but I wasn't sure if when it triggers, if 2 phones have the app on it.
Yeah, so 6 feet or less to that person for more than 15 minutes. So let's say if you are in the campus store and you're with an individual, or there's a lot of people in the campus store, different people that you might not know their name or their phone number, and you're passing this person, and cumulatively you were with this individual for more than 15 minutes and for less than 6 feet apart. Then if that person decides to, in their app, say, "Oop, I tested positive," you would get an exposure notification on your phone if you also had that app on your phone.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much for clarifying.
Hi, I had a quick question, if you don't mind. I had some question. Well, I think it's a great idea. And, the first thought that came into my mind was accessibility, especially for those students with visual hearing impairments or any language barriers. So what are some accommodations that, your department makes for those students? And if this was to be required, in every institutions, how would those students be accommodated?
Yeah, so we have language services with our contact tracers, and they're trained in cultural competency. So if English is not your first language and you would prefer speaking in a different language, our contact tracers are able to then use translational services to interview that individual and make sure that they feel comfortable during the interview speaking to them, even if English is not their first language.
There was a point made over in the chat about being contacted during the day if one was at work and not feeling comfortable being interviewed while they were at work. If in fact a contact tracer contacts you, you answer the phone and simply say, I can't be interviewed now. Can you set a separate time, for example, in the evening or over a lunch hour or something where the interview could take place?
Yes, so we are able to, if people can't speak to us, we want to make participation in contact tracing as low threshold as possible and as low barrier as possible, because at the end of the day, our goal is for everyone who needs to participate to feel comfortable participating. So we can absolutely reschedule interviews for people, set up an appointment. The only thing that I would say is where it gets a little bit tricky is if someone's at work, we need to be able to let them know that they need to go home, because if we're calling them, it means that we're calling them because they need to go home and isolate or quarantine. And so it's, we certainly understand that can be very challenging for some people, that we are asking them to leave work and to take off, anywhere between 7 to 14 days, potentially even longer. But we are able to, part of what we do is we provide any of the individuals that need it with work or school excuse letters. So they're, signed by the Secretary of Health, they're on Maryland Department of Health letterhead. We've got a way on the letter to check that these are legitimate letters. And so we are able to provide people with those excuse letters, explaining to their work or school why they need to isolate or quarantine. And then we are able to, once they have completed their isolation or their quarantine monitoring, we're able to then provide them with another letter stating that they've been successfully cleared from the Department of Health and they are no longer considered contagious and are fine to go back to work or school. And we've also now adapted those letters to also include the allowance for travel. I know that has become a big thing now, with the vaccinations, and airlines are being pretty strict about if you've had a positive test in the past X amount of months, you need to present proof that you've recovered. And so we're able to provide that proof as well. So those are some resources that we try and provide to make sure that people do feel like they can successfully and safely isolate or quarantine without it having huge rippling impacts in their lives.
Thank you. That's very helpful information.
Mm-hmm. Quick question. And I'm sorry if this was our question. How do students get? Sorry.
Sorry, can you say it again?
And are there competing apps where they may do you just open your phone up in your app store and try to find COVID tracing app, and they know if they have the right one or the legitimate one, that sort of thing?
Yeah, so our app is for the state of Maryland. It's MD COVID Alert Exposure Notification app. And with that QR code that we have on our presentation slides, if you scan that, you can know how to download it. For the iPhone, it's through the settings. So it's not even an app, actually. It's through your setting notifications. For Android, it's an app. Other apps are for other states. I'm not sure of other applications that are used in Maryland other than the MD COVID Alert. Sarah, do you?
No, there aren't any other. There might be, I would have to check. There might be some third party sort of other apps, but that aren't as robust and aren't as utilized because again, these apps only work if people download and enable them. And so the state of Maryland exposure notification one, the one that was developed by Google and developed by Apple, is the MD COVID Alert. And we have, I believe we just surpassed 2 million people in the state of Maryland that have opted into it or have downloaded it. So it's definitely, it's an excellent resource. People are using it. It's now available for 13 and over because 13-year-olds have cell phones now. But so it is that is an available service, and Yeah, and again, as Perry said, it's really meant to be supplemental to contact tracing. It's really a way to widen our net. And exactly in the example that Perry gave, you know, if you're on the bus and you're sitting next to people, you might not know the person's name that you're sitting next to. And so if you are doing an interview with a contact tracer, you're not going to be able to give us that person's name or contact information, because so that person may have slipped through the cracks. But with MD COVID Alert, that person might be able to get a notification and in that way sort of initiate the process on their own. So it's really an expansion of the net that we're casting.
Yeah, it catches those people that aren't going to be named during an interview.
Right. And just to be clear, I think you said because it was developed by Google and Apple, it's already built into the phone. If students just check their settings, they can enable it there.
So for the iPhone, yes, it's in their settings, but for the Android phones, it's through the Google Play Store, just like any other app download.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
And we've got a one pager with all of the information about MD COVID Alert and how to download it that we'll make sure to send out along with the slides.
Perfect. And sorry, one more question. This is more for either Joe, Zakia, or Annie. Is there any sort of outreach efforts that you're looking for the student council to do in terms of supporting what you all are trying to do to amplify the contact tracing or make sure students know how to get the app and are maybe trying to use the app?
Well, we will also be talking to the vice presidents for student affairs, but I just thought it was really important for the student leadership to hear directly from the health department the importance of this, so that it wasn't feeling like it was university top down kind of thing. So anything that the student leadership can do via social media, via email, via any other way to say why this is important. And remember, the more people who get vaccinated, the less involved this is going to be. The sooner we beat down this virus, the less invasive any of this will be. So I think as people leave the campus and get ready to come back to campus, there will not be the same huge numbers that we've had up to this point. But I believe that students hearing from other students is going to be the very best way for people to understand, to engage with the health department, and that it is separate from the student conduct process, if you will. I think that's one of the reasons why some of the students on campus might not have been responding to contact tracing, because they've been at a party that they shouldn't have been at by, well, health department rules and executive orders as well. But that's not the reason for this. This is strictly a public health measure.
Yes, and we do not tell people for having parties. Please participate in contact tracing. Our contact tracers do not judge people. I can let people know I actually tested positive for COVID-19 in October. I went to a Halloween get together. And so I talked to a contact tracer and I was not judged. I told them everything. I told, so things happen. Please participate, because that's going to save people's lives if you participate.
Yep. Absolutely. Yes, exactly as Perry said, we're not there to shame. We don't want to tell you what you like. We're not here to judge you for anything that you did. Our main goal is to help get people into isolation and quarantine, and more importantly, figure out if there's anything that they need. Because that, it can be a really scary time. I mean, I know that this has been around for over a year now, but it still can be very scary if you test positive and you're not sure what to do, or if you've been exposed and you're not sure what to do. And contact tracers really are there to help be that entry point into what resources are available and figuring out if there are things that we can do to help you successfully complete that isolation or quarantine.
Yeah, so we will share that one pager with you guys about the app.
Great. Well, having you all come today, hopefully, because we have 175,000 students that this group of leaders represents, hopefully we can get the word out and be supportive of the health department and your contact tracing processes.
Well, thank you so much for having us. And I also just want to say, if any of you all have other student groups or back at your specific campuses, if there are any other opportunities that you would like for us to come and present at, please feel free to let us know. I can drop my email in the chat. But we would be more than happy to continue having this conversation in whatever capacity that looks like. So let me just put my email in the chat.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sarah and Perry. That was awesome. And Perry, I loved your story because that was human.
The world happens, but let's just take responsibility for ourselves and keep moving forward so we can stop the lockdown, stop the pandemic, vaccination, contact tracing for the win.
For the win, 100% agree. Something that comes to mind before I forget, I do see both your emails in there, and definitely folks email. If you haven't already, I'm sure Mary Perg, which has students from across the system as well, would love to have you all come and talk to them. And if you need that, I can give you contacts.
That'd be great.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome. Well, everybody, if you want to, I'm going to try to strike a compromise for our schedule. If you need to go to the restroom, grab a bite to eat, please do that. Please do. But so that we don't have to stay late today, I am just going to go ahead and start proceeding with the next part of our agenda. But yes, but really, truly, thank you, Perry. Thank you, Sarah. Really wonderful presentation. Thank you. So up next we have election updates and campus report highlights, etc. To begin with, and this is more of just a check-in, and it's totally okay if neither of you have any updates this go around, but do either of our committees, student fees or mental health, have anything they wanted to share at this point?
The only thing I'd say is just keep Max from FSU, Frostburg State told me about it, but if you can just keep talking about your process at your school, it's very helpful. I had a good talk with Joe and Zakia, and so if you can just keep letting me know what your process is, it's good to know so we can try to make it more consistent. Consistent across the system, but still unique to each campus, so that way it's still beneficial to what your needs are as a campus. So I know at Frostburg State, for example, their vice president of student affairs basically just created a committee after Max testified on the student fee bill. Things like that shouldn't necessarily be happening. So if you don't have a committee, please let me know. If you have a different system altogether, please let me know. But we definitely want to do it. And if anyone's interested in fees for next year, please let me know.
Definitely. That's one that existed last year and this year and hopefully keeps on because you've done such great work. Thanks, Dan. And do you have like a rough idea, even to just put in the chat of what schools you still need a process from? Because I can also try to make
basically
sure.
all, I mean,
Okay.
UMCs no, because they don't pay fees, so I don't need that, but yeah, basically all.
All, okay. So everybody here, I'm looking at you, whether you're a box or a face. Thank you so much, Dan. And I know you had updates earlier, Beth, but if you had anything else, feel free to jump in. But again, no pressure, and thanks for all that you've been doing with mental health as well.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, just real quick, just to build on what Dan said again, if any of you, especially you undergrads, had particular interest in working with the mental health committee, now's really the time. One of the reasons why I'm sort of encouraging this as part of the bylaws discussion is, I'm seeing a lot of interest from particular campuses and from particular students that might also already be overcommitted. And one of the things that's really important to discuss, and for me right now, I'll be honest, is ensuring that we have continuity and coverage to make sure that these conversations sort of stay on track and keep going. And so if we can start that off, right now this month, that would be ideal. The last couple months, sort of my life has kind of been very interesting and fun. A lot of unexpected things happening. So having that sort of backup is really important. So definitely, reach out to myself, reach out to Annie, reach out to Laura, reach out to anybody in the executive committee if you're interested. But if you are, at those campuses, Salisbury, Frostburg, UMCP, just anywhere, that you might have a health center and counseling center that we sort of want to develop relationships with, definitely reach out so that we can do that. So that's the only thing I wanted to really reiterate again.
Thank you. That was great, Beth. And then did everybody see, I'm taking a photo just so I can make sure you see the poll? That might be easier than me taking a photo and texting Zakia to say the poll works. Cool. The poll is up. This poll will help USM Central as well as Nate represent all the schools as accurately well on Friday, which is awesome. So please do fill that poll out. So a couple of things. I feel like we really have reiterated town hall several times. Just one more time for good measure, please do fill out the questions and help make sure that that is a great event and share it across your assemblies as well with other student groups and so forth. And that will help make that really successful and set a really good precedent for the folks coming after us next term. Speaking of next term, all right, it's election time. So I've written about election updates are twofold for me. One is one of my jobs as president is to make sure I notify you all. I've written about half of you so far, and I'll be writing the second half as well, asking when are your own personal elections at your university, because we want to know as soon as you do who your successors are at your campuses so that we can do the right kinds of outreach and support to help make sure that we don't lose any momentum in between terms. So just be on the lookout for that. I know some elections are starting this month, others are in May, and we'll be looking for all of the folks. And some of you might be coming back, and that is also super fantastic and awesome. So that's piece one, is those kinds of elections. Then piece two is our own USMSC elections. USMSC has 3 elections, or election positions, if you will. One is mine, so president. One is Laura, VP of Grad Affairs, since I see Laura right next to my face. And the other one is Bernetta, and that's VP of Undergraduate Affairs. So those 3 roles, they are very time intensive. I want to be fully transparent about that, but they are also extremely rewarding and meaningful roles. So I thought maybe what would be helpful for today is for each of us to kind of share just the briefest of snapshots in case any of you who are returning might be interested in one of our roles, or if you have somebody in mind from your institution who might be interested in one of these roles. Key things to keep in mind is that this role begins, all 3 of these roles in an ideal world, begin over the summer so that we can hit the ground running in August with that transition and onboarding thing, because we don't want to lose any time and any chances to take what we learn and listen from all of the schools and turn that into tangible actions, whether that's creating the committees or starting to look at federal or state legislation, etc. So I'll start and then I'll pass it to Bernetta and then to Laura to give just quick snapshots of these roles. Ways to nominate someone for these roles. It's as simple as an email. So just email us if you have somebody that you have in mind that you think would be really good. That includes yourself. You can nominate yourself, or you can nominate somebody that you think would be great. If you're nominating somebody else, please include them on that email, or let us know their email so we can actually reach out to them and let them know that they have been nominated. And the other thing is, it's not like a tight timeline. So for those who have been here in past years, it can be as short notice as they come to the next meeting and nominate themselves on the floor. We would prefer if we know people in advance, but there's a lot of flexibility there. So you all have gotten to see me throughout the year. So there's a lot of behind the scenes roles for the president, but it's really, I view it as a servant leadership position. So making sure that you do outreach to every single campus. I've visited every single campus virtually and through phone calls, trying to make sure that you're getting an even understanding of graduate student concerns and undergraduate student concerns, and keeping those relationships up, and then bridging what you're listening to into action and into forming like things that you need to see at the next meeting or having a special meeting. In addition, the president's also reporting at every Board of Regents meeting, at every Chancellor's Council meeting, and that's where you're the other side of the bridge. So we're helping give advice and consultation, giving the student perspective to the Chancellor, to the Board of Regents, and also helping them. So an example of that in the fall would be learning about the USM naming policy, creating a special meeting to make sure student feedback is a piece of that, listening to our sister councils, learning that they're working on academic integrity and helping connect that so that there's student voices there. So it's really a bridge role. It's a lot of fun. It's very active, but you get to know really awesome people. And when I say that, I mean all of you. So you get to know really awesome, fantastic people. So with that, I will pass it to Bernetta to give a quick snapshot of what her role is like.
Oh, thanks, Annie. I'm over here trying to type some quick stuff in a list of what we're doing. Laura's probably doing the same. So primarily, we support the president first and foremost, right? And that being Annie, making sure she has everything she needs. And that also includes like filling in. There was one meeting, for instance, with the Board of Regents that I filled in for Annie. So we do that as well. We review a lot of materials, written materials, reports, and we write a lot of materials. We're constantly writing, constantly reviewing. As Annie mentioned, it's very time intensive, at least for us, because we are very, very active. And we certainly hope that the new team continues to be that way as well. So we're often up via email, text, phone calls, impromptu meetings around the clock, if you will. I mean, we turn it off at usually 1 a.m., 2 a.m., but we put in whatever is needed to make sure that you all are getting the support that you need. And as Joe mentioned, our 175,000 students around the globe are also getting what they need from us, as well as USM, because we do advise the Chancellor. We do work with several folks across USM as well. So we're trying to identify those meetings and places to constantly plug y'all in and to plug ourselves in. Zakia and Joe are phenomenal at just continuing to support us and filling us in as well. We coordinate and support our directors and committees. And if there are gaps or turnovers, we usually have to just step in and pick up the slack. So we're not the co-directors, but if we lose a director for whatever the case may be, we often find ourselves filling in those shoes as well. And that has happened quite a bit this year. So that's pretty much, I think, a summary of what some of us, what we do, what I've been doing. And then Laura, I don't know what I missed. I'm sure I missed something. So what do you have?
I'm probably going to say just about the same thing in different words. So I've been able to quantify it. I feel like I put in about 5 to 20 hours every week. So if that kind of time commitment is not something that you already know you can do, then this might not be a position for you. But the position, you can definitely make it your own. As we looked at the bylaws, there is some flexibility there. Your responsibility is to support the grad reps and the initiatives as you see fit. You really have to have that team spirit and put in that team effort. You have to work well with others somehow. Sometimes you bite your tongue or you look the other way because the objective is to really support the students, and it's not about any kind of personal petty stuff in between. You really have to be proactive as well. Sometimes when you're like, oh, there's nothing to do. Well, there's always something to do. You can reach out, talk to somebody, kind of reassess what's going on and where you can support. You have to be able to recognize what is needed or what you can do, and then differentiate that versus what you want to do. Once again, with Annie said about servant leadership, a lot of this is behind the scenes. It's not really like there's not a lot of glory in it. It's very much a management role, or at least as I've seen it, I've taken it. It's just supporting, coordinating, facilitating, and discussing. It's not really about, forwarding my own objectives, but supporting the objectives of the students and the people on your team. So yeah, but like with all that said, it has been amazing experience to be able to work with the people and meet the people that I've met, and kind of taken on this leadership and this responsibility in this vein has really been a great professional development opportunity for me. So if that's something that you kind of want to work on, whether it's just something on your resume or the skills you want to build in yourself, this is absolutely a wonderful chance to do that, I think.
Can I just add one more thing to what Laura said? She mentioned relationships and being able to work together regardless of the circumstance. And that's so important because neither Annie nor myself nor Laura knew each other before serving this year. And we certainly didn't get to pick who we served with, but the three of us together, we just love working together. We have just complemented each other so well. And I think that makes a really big difference. And we have co-directors as well who just work so well together. So Laura's spot on when she says you have to be willing to have great relationships with people and work together through whatever the circumstance may be to have a really successful year. So I just wanted to emphasize that because I love y'all so much. So
I echo all that love. We love y'all. So you make our jobs worthwhile in so many ways. So we love listening to you. And sometimes we wish there were more hours in a day. We wish we could do more. We truly do. But we are happy with how much we have been able to do. And we hope we're setting a good foundation for those of you who might be like, maybe I'll do that. It'll be such a great use of my time and energy because it will.
Can I add one point? And
yeah.
Annie, and excuse me if you said it because I was multitasking as I usually do. But the exec ladies are trying their best and have already created a great draft of a document to pass on to the next executive board so that things don't get lost. You know, Joe and I will be around. We aren't going anywhere. We'll do what we can always. But one thing that lacks in a lot of student organizations is some kind of a succession plan or a transition document. So they've already started on that. And Joe and I are there from the very beginning to help you make sure you know where you have to be and figuring out the landscape. So Ashley said it in the chat, big shoes to fill. It's true. Joe and I have done this for a number of years now. And between the executive team, Nate, and the co-directors, like miles beyond. You all have done a ton. And it's only Annie and maybe two other people here, Yvonne, who've been around long enough to have seen other administrations who have done a great job. But the speed with which this group has worked and the caliber of the work has jumped up. And it was already from a solid place. But this has been an extraordinary year. So we're hoping that folks will be ready to jump in with the same level of energy. And feel free to ask any of us questions ahead of time. I can remember when Annie was texting me in the chat last year this time going, so wait, what about this? And how's this work? And I don't have a car. What am I going to do with COVID? All of those questions before she even decided to throw her hat in the ring. So we're here to help ahead of time as you're trying to decide too.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, y'all. So hopefully we made those sound as attractive as they should because they are really good. But we also don't want to say they aren't a lot of work when they are. So it's a balance. So just know if you're committing to this, like when I got this, I did withdraw from other orgs that I was a part of so that I could devote the time I needed to this. But that's always a tough decision we all have to make because I know every single one of you is an extremely busy student leader. So you know exactly what I'm talking about. All right. So does anyone have a question at this time about elections or nominating people or anything of that sort? It's okay if not. Okay. So campus reports. We had campus reports from about 5 campuses. The reports were pretty much all around. Everybody seems to be in a really good mood this spring. It was all pretty good. It was all very short answers. It looks like some really cool fundraisers are happening for like the arts at one of the schools. There's lots of DEI initiatives happening at the schools. There was one, I did see the one incident, which I have marked, but I will loop in the right people for that. But otherwise, because there was nothing too specific that was relevant to the whole council was very much school specific stuff that couldn't really be replicated. I'm just going to open it up here if any of you have updates from your campuses now that you would like to share, or questions you want to share because you're like, hey, this is happening to us right now. How do other people approach this problem or concern?
So this is Randy from University of Baltimore. I want to go first. Right now we just passed a resolution, and it's more so like on the DEI side. We noticed that none of our buildings on campus represent people of color. So our SGA passed a resolution to start the conversation of possibly naming a building in the future to a person of color. We're also getting ready to finish Inclusion Alley with adding more stuff to the alley, a Black Lives mural, a trans mural, LGBT mural. We had plans to do a Grammarly and Calm subscription for the campus. Due to some contesting issues with the school, we had to cancel out our Calm contract that we were trying to start. So we're going to add more subscriptions to our Grammarly program that we already have. And our elections will be this month. Actually, tomorrow we find out who all are running for all the positions that we have at the University of Baltimore. And before I finish, just, when it comes to building names, like, is there a certain process? Like I said, even though we're starting the conversation on our campus, we just want to make sure we get to the table with school administration that we're well not versed on the process.
Randy, this is Joe Boffman. You need to look at the Board of Regents policies, because in fact, they just, in the last couple of months, I think it was, Nate, made some changes to the naming policy across all institutions, in part because of the recognition that they had as well, that in fact, there were issues around buildings with current names and the possibility of changing some of those names. That also explains a little bit about the first and foremost way to get a building named after you is to drop $20 or $30 million toward the naming, toward the building itself, and you're much more likely to get your name on it. However, there are times and places for honorific naming, and even if it weren't a building, it might be an auditorium, a lecture hall, a lobby, an open space, in fact, where the name would be seen frequently. Those are all good options.
Randy, I would add, so we're looking at the same thing at College Park right now, a few buildings of our own. And so we're in the process that Joe mentioned. Basically, the process is that you just have to do a lot of research on it, on the name, and identify where that person's background was more so systematically affecting usually people of color, or what they did in the past wrong, and how that doesn't align with the current values of the institution. And then like Joe was mentioning, there are some financial constraints with some of these building names if they were endowed, but if they were not, then really the only financial cost is like the marketing side of like renaming a building. Any legal things, again, that's more so I guess if there's an endowment part of it, but and then that gets submitted to the office of the president. The president has to approve of it, and that gets sent off to the Board of Regents. Now, I'd say that's also probably a very long process, because after what you do, I'm sure that the president of the institution is going to create their own committee to look into it as well. And so it'll almost go into a circle, but it's a good place to start. There's also a petition side of it to get faculty, staff, and students to sign a petition related to it. So we're looking at the same stuff at College Park right now.
Thank you.
Totally. And Dan, I don't know if you could add just a little bit to that for the, I'm totally blanking on the name, but even going like the next step of the name, looking at how names change, but like that new is it called, did they decide on onboarding? But like the new orientation on, like, could you talk a little bit? Because I think some of the other schools think that's really neat.
Yeah, so it's still being worked out, but President Pines, our new president who started in July, started the Tear Up and Strong initiative. It's my mask is over there, but it's like on our mask, but it's also becoming like an onboarding thing. So like, how do we teach freshmen, new faculty, new staff, whatever, the values of our institution? And while we're teaching them about the values of our institution, how do we teach them about important people of Asian American background, of the Black community, of Latinx community, of different communities in our university's history, so that when students come to our campus, they know about not just white people on our school's history, basically, and how that engages with the values of our institution as well. I'd also suggest, if you want to explore something like that at your institution, you talk about your community. One thing that I suggested that I hope they do is College Park, for example. We have a community called Lakeland. It is a primarily and historically Black community that College Park basically pushed out years ago, many years ago. And so I said, and not a lot of our students know that. Many of our students don't know that at all. And so I said it was important that we also at least touch on that, since we do play a role, and a lot of our institutions play a role in gentrification or pushing out lower income residents of our own communities. And so I think that's an important part as well when you talk about your university's background. But it's definitely something that's exciting, and hopefully in the long run, it helps build that better culture and values focused community on our campus.
That's come up in our DEI meetings as well. We've heard from students, that they just learning about how the institution itself was built, built slaves, minorities, that sort of thing, and just kind of working as much as we can into the curriculum itself at the onset, when students first start attending these institutions, could go a long way. So yeah, Dan, that's spot on.
I don't know whether Tom Forrest might want to jump in here, but Frostburg during this past year did a wonderful job of engaging their community on exactly that issue, Dan.
Yeah, like Joe said, it much like what Dan was saying about College Park, we had the same thing happen at Frostburg. Our community was named Brownsville, and they were essentially at the top of where our upper quad is now. That was their historical community that the university, as it expanded, essentially pushed out and forced them to sell their homes for unequal prices and things like that. Which is just something you've seen across Maryland, honestly. But I mean, we did a good job, or at least I think we did a good job, recognizing that recently. We put a memorial at the top of our upper quad, recognizing the names of the families that were in that community. Worked with the Brownsville Project, which is a group of Brownsville descendants who work to actively recognize that community in Frostburg and the surrounding areas with the university. And generally, it had been something that historically had been, kind of swept under the rug. We did it, but we didn't really recognize that we did it. So the fact that we were able to recognize it as a university in the system, and just saying, look, this is what we did. It's not great, but we're recognizing it now, I think was a really good job.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks, Thomas. That's awesome. Did any other schools have some similar things going on or that you wanted to share?
So this is Marissa from UMB. Hi. I just have two updates, DEI wise. So UMB just as a whole welcomed their Chief Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Officer, who I believe will be starting in July. And on that same vein, USGA has also created a position for our executive board, or to supplement executive board leadership as a diversity, equity, inclusion officer, student-wise. And so that will be elections. Our elections are taking place this month, with the new e-board leading the new meeting in May. And that position will be slightly different in the election process instead of being, usually we elect executive board members from our Senate body. So members who are already senators in our Senate body. And instead that position is open to all students who are interested, and there's an application process that goes on, and then a committee that will review those applications. And we already have at least one student I know for a fact definitely interested, and a few more who have inquired. So those things are going great.
That's awesome. Thanks, Marissa. Anyone else? Very cool. Well, I was thinking, I know Randy, you posed that question at the beginning, and I just do want to give you Baltimore a shout out as well. You all have devoted so much time and energy to DEI initiatives throughout the year at UBalt, and definitely noticed, even as early as the summer, I thought of you Baltimore when we got those announcements this past week about Juneteenth, because that was one of the very first things you Baltimore, when we met over the summer, brought up was Juneteenth. So I thought that was really cool, and it allowed me as early as the summer, my very first Board of Regents meeting, to voice that as a student cause and a student thing that was really supported and cared about. So it's cool to see the Juneteenth happen as well. So yeah.
Could I say one thing about the Juneteenth recognition?
Of course.
It was brought up in our Vice Presidents for Student Affairs meeting that while it's wonderful, we think that we are recognizing it and actually calling it out for what it is, and making all the appropriate statements. It happens in June after most of the students are gone. So if in fact the student council had any ideas of how the actual celebration or perhaps the day of service or something like that, how that could be brought back into the regular academic year and tied to Juneteenth. Don't know whether you all are interested in that at all, but it was an interesting point made by our vice presidents. It's great that we're recognizing it, but the students aren't here to celebrate it with us.
I was going to just say real quick, I made a comment in the chat, but yeah, Joe, that came up in our meeting as well, where students were wondering how do we tie it to a day of service, whether it's MLK Day, and not just for Juneteenth, but just in general to raise awareness. So yeah, I think we're still thinking on that, but see if we can come up.
So at Bowie, we encourage student involvement, whether it's during the school year or whether it's afterwards. The GSA president and myself worked on the Martin Luther King Day Jr. DC virtual parade that was this year, because it's COVID, we can't get together in person. But we make sure that throughout the year, it's a conversation that's still had, and it's not a conversation that's saved for Juneteenth. So something that might be helpful is to not just only talk about it on those specific holidays, but to incorporate it into a regular conversation, and have something virtual that, especially in COVID, that still honors that spirit.
Thanks, Liberty. That's really cool. Bowie does that.
Well, we were the first ones in Maryland, so we should probably be high on that game.
Yeah, for sure. And shout out for a very cool shirt. I like your shirt a lot. Very good. And then we are kind of on track to start the shared governance talk. I don't want to cut anyone off though. Is there any other things that folks wanted to ask while you have your peers with you?
I did have a question. At the beginning of the semester, our Chief Diversity Officer in the Office of Diversity and Inclusion they went to a vendor to get a diversity training, and they kind of worked with them to develop it and tailor it for our university. As of right now, there are no mandates to take the diversity training. And that's something that when we were working with them and having conversations with them prior to the release of the training, we as the SGA and then other students as well, we kind of made it a point to them that if you don't have anything backing it or any, I guess I don't want to use the word consequences, but if you don't have any consequences, people aren't really going to take the training, and that's seen in other trainings, whether it's the alcohol awareness training that people take at the beginning of the year in orientation, or other trainings that are mandated and have some backing behind them. You definitely need that to make sure that people are engaging with it. And I just wanted to know where you guys, I see in the chat, people are saying orientation and those things. So orientation and other places where you guys think that that should be pushed forward. And I think they're working to get it into orientation, but every time someone offers up orientation as a place, they're like, it's already so crowded and already so much going into it that they don't want to add to it. But we may have to if we want to get the collaboration and cooperation that we need with this training. So I guess I just want to ask, do you all have training? You all have diversity trainings at your universities? And if so, how do you, what's the backing behind it to make people take it?
David, I'll just say, I don't think it's mandatory anywhere. Some schools, I do believe, have woven in maybe DEI topics. The one that really comes to mind that's woven into some orientations is how to go about filing hate bias or hate crime reports. And that process is often very explicitly shared during orientation. I think sometimes it is part of a broader DEI conversation, but sometimes it's just part of the, here are the places you go for emergency kinds of things. We have within the next couple of weeks a cultural diversity report that's due from the campuses. So I think before I see you all in May, I'll be able to give you kind of an idea of if that pops up in some reports, but I'm almost certain it's not mandatory anywhere yet for students, faculty, or staff, but that there are lots of offerings. And this would be something that your SGA or GSA combined, faculty senate, like they would be the ones that would need to say to your university administration, we support making this mandatory. And let's talk together about what that looks like and if there are incentives or if there are consequences. You know, we try to go with the incentives first, but those would be conversations that you want to have on campus. And if you are able to make some headway there, then you know, it's great. You know, it's highly likely that the system at some point will say officially, you know, as we look at structural racism and things of that nature, there may be a whole lot of recommendations that come out of the system. That could be one of them, but that's not something we can mandate from the system. So it would still go back to what does it look like on our campus? And you all do have a great forum here to have conversations that you can then share and discuss on campus. But the ultimate mandate or the ultimate what it looks like would need to come from campus and would have more traction if it comes from your shared governance groups than if it came, you know, from anywhere else. But I'll let you know when I see in these reports that come up soon.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Awesome. Cool. And something I've seen a couple times in a couple places that I would recommend to everybody is really embracing the space and influence you have as SGA and GSA leaders to incorporate DEI trainings at your assembly at some point during your year, because you get so much exposure then to students, and it can have an amplifying effect as they tell their student orgs. Because a lot of times it's not required, but there's these really great hubs on each campus that are offering various forms of implicit bias training or diversity trainings for all different kinds of community members on campus. Cool. I think next is our closed, and sorry, this is what happens when I have like all the windows up. Yes, we're going to enter our closed session for the shared governance conversation.
Okay, thank you all.
See you, Joe. Thanks for everything.
I am going to stop the live stream. Give me a second to click everything off and make one of you the host so that the whole thing doesn't shut down. Give me a second. So Annie, you're the host. And let me also say quickly for one other, as you all are talking, once we log out, there were still a few people who had not responded to the poll. It's come to our attention that maybe some people are just undecided and didn't want to go yes or no. So share that amongst yourselves if you want to, and I'll ask the executive ladies to let us know or let Nate know too. Because we can see where it landed, but there were still maybe 7 or 8 people who hadn't responded. So that is it. I am going to stop all of this. 1 second. I have too many windows open. Annie, in live.
Right, it's always like so many. And a really also to Zakia's